Hi everybody, it's Michael, and today I'm back with another of my video walkthroughs, and this time I want to show you Sentinels of the Multiverse, the Enhanced Edition. Why Enhanced? Well, let me explain that a little further. Sentinels of the Multiverse came out last year, 2011, I guess around August, and back then it looked like this. And created quite some buzz, and so 2 expansions were released. This and this one. And then finally, Greater Than Games, the publisher, decided to come out with an Enhanced Edition, which is this one. And the nice thing about the Enhanced Edition is that it's basically a revised edition of the first edition, no surprises here, but actually it copies the style in which cards can be stored from deck building games. And this box actually offers room for all the games from the base game, the 2 expansions, and upcoming expansions. And they also put some tokens in there that wasn't in the first game. Okay, now that you know what this is, or what this history is, what is the game actually about? Well, as you can probably guess, this is a superhero game, superhero comic game. It's cooperative, it's ages 13 and up, it plays in around 30 to 60 minutes, and it's for 2 to 5 players. Now, when I say superhero game, first of all, you might ask whether this comic superhero game is set in any known universe. It's not. So they didn't get a license or anything, which is actually a good idea, I think, and they created their own universe with lots of characters, villains, and lots of flavor. I'm not a huge comic or superhero buff myself, but there are some illusions that even I get in the game, and I'll point some of them out when I show the game later on. But if you're interested in this, in his review of the game, Marco Arnaudo actually went in very great detail of the different allusions and relations between this game and classic comics. So if you're into that, I would definitely recommend to check this out. The second question is that in recent times, hero or superhero type games are always deck builders or deck constructions. This is also not the case in this game. In this game you have a pre-constructed deck and you just play with it during the game, and each of the different heroes and villains plays very differently. But how does the game play? So basically you select a villain who has an evil plot and certain minions and artifacts and whatever. And right now with promo villain characters you can choose between 13 villains. And the goal of the game is for the heroes to reduce that villain to 0 hit points. That's basically the goal for every villain, but there might be villains who have alternate goals. In addition to selecting a villain, you also select environment, and currently there are 8. And this environment can either help the heroes, or help the villains, or help and hinder both, and again each of them has a very distinct flavor. And then finally, each of the 1 to 5 players selects one or multiple heroes. So normally you would only select 1 hero, but if you play solo or play with 2 players, then it's recommended that you play more than 1 hero each. And currently you can choose between 15 heroes, and each hero has like a character card which is always in play, and a deck that gets shuffled at the beginning, and they build up from here. I guess that's everything I wanted to say. Now I'll show you the game. 4 players against 1 villain, and yeah, I hope you enjoy this, and I talk to you later. Have fun. Okay, here we can see the setup game. Over here we have our villain, Apostat. Then we have 4 heroes, the Argent Adept, Fanatic, Mr. Fixer, and Unity. We have an environment, Rook City. And finally we have here the back of the rules, because it's a nice overview of how a round plays out. And over here we have some tokens, hit points and status tracker tokens. What's also nice is that in the rulebook you have a list of all the heroes and their complexity. And as we can see, Unity has a complexity of 2, Mr. Fix has a complexity of 2, Fanatic has a complexity of 2, and the Argent Adept actually has a complexity of 3. And you also have an overview of all the villains and how difficult they are, and actually the one we choose has just a difficulty of 2 on the 1 to 4 scale. So if we take a look at the round reference, we see that it's first the villain's turn, then each of the heroes' turns, and finally the environment turn. And moreover, the villain's turn is comprised of the start, then the villain plays a card, and then it's the end of the villain turn. So, our villain is Apostat. He starts with 66 hit points, which we can see down here. He is an Infernal Emissary. And that's his villain symbol, and just keep it in mind because we'll refer to that later on. Now, if we take a little bit of a closer look, we see some setup rules here. As I said, at the start of the game, put Apostat's villain character card into play, Infernal Emissary side up, and I did that. Also, we were supposed to look through his deck for Condemnation. Put it into play and then shuffle the villain deck. Condemnation is his sword over here, and we'll take a close look at that in a minute. And then gameplay. If you would be reduced to 0 of your hit points, something happens, so that's not important now. And at the end of the villain turn, something happens. Okay, Condemnation is a relic. It has 11 hit points. It has an end of the villain turn effect, which we'll take a closer look at in a minute. And also it says that damage dealt to this card is reduced by 1. And for that I've used one of these handy tracking tokens. Okay, so there are no at the start of the villain turn effects yet. So basically what happens next is that the villain plays a card. And then is another relic. It's a Gauntlet of Perdition. And whenever Apostat would deal damage to a target, this card, not he, deals that target 1 infernal damage. So we put it next to the other cards that we already have. Okay, after that it's the end of the villain turn, and there are several things happen. And they happen in the order that the cards were played, and obviously this villain character card was in play first. And it says, at the end of the villain turn, Apostat deals the hero target with the highest hit points H minus 2 melee damage. Now H is a placeholder and stands for number of heroes. We have 4 heroes, so H is 4, minus 2 is 2. So actually he does the target with the highest hit points, 2 melee damage and 2 infernal damage. But whenever he deals melee damage, we have to remember that the gauntlet deals another infernal damage. So actually the hero with the highest hit points would get 2 melee damage, plus 1 infernal damage, and another 2 infernal damage for 5 damage overall. And currently, the Argent Adept has 24 hit points, Unity has 26, Mr. Fixer has 28, and Fnatic has 30, so Fnatic takes 5 damage. However, remember the symbol I said to keep in mind on the villain character card? Fnatic, our second hero, has the same symbol, which means that the villain and she are nemesis, and that means whenever one of them deals damage to the other, that damage is increased by 1. So actually, instead of doing 2 melee damage and 2 infernal damage, he actually does 3 and 3. The damage from the gauntlet is not increased, because the gauntlet deals damage and not Apostat. So actually, instead of taking 5 damage, she takes 7 damage altogether. Next up is the effect on Condemnation. At the end of the villain turn, Apostat deals the hero target with the highest hit points 3 melee damage, plus 1 from the gauntlets, so that's 4. And right now Mr. Fixer is the one with the highest hit points, so Mr. Fixer is dealt 4 damage. And that was our first villain turn. Next up are the heroes, and a hero turn is comprised of 5 steps. First we have the start, then he can play a card, he can use a power, he can draw a card, and finally it's the end of the hero turn. Okay, first up is the Argent Adept, the Virtuoso of the Void. He's basically what you would call in a traditional role-playing game a bard, who supports, heals the party, but can also deal a little bit of damage. And here, right now he has 24 hit points because he didn't suffer any hit point loss at the beginning. And you can see his hit point number printed on here. He also starts with a hand of 4 cards from his shuffled deck. I didn't mention that earlier. And he doesn't have any start of the hero turn effects. So next up is playing a card. And he decides to play the Scherzo of Frost and Flame. The Scherzo is an ongoing card, meaning it stays in play, and it's also a melody. Next up is the hero power phase, where he can use a power. This card has a perform effect, so that's not a power, but each hero has an innate power, and in his case it says activate a perform text. So we use his innate power to activate a perform text, and the perform text says the Argent Adept deals 1 target 1 cold damage, then deals 1 target 1 fire damage. And for both targets we opt to select the Gauntlet of Perdition that the villain just played, so that drops from 5 to 3 hit points. Then his power phase is over, so he draws a card, adds it to his hand, and then since there are no end of the hero turns effects, his turn is over. Okay, next up is Fnatic. From her 30 hit points, she has 23 left because she already took 7 damage. As we already established, she's Apostat's nemesis. She's kind of, angel, maybe paladin sort of character who does radiant and melee damage, and also can heal and sacrifice himself. Okay, so no start of the turn effects. Then playing a card, we play this one-shot card, Final Dive. So since it's a one-shot, it doesn't stay in play, but this gets discarded afterwards, and it says that I can destroy a target with 4 of your hit points other than a character card. And I didn't mention this explicitly earlier, but everything that has hit points is a target. So basically, all the other characters are targets, and the villain itself and his 2 relics are targets. So I need to pick one that has current hit points of 4 or less. The only choice we have is the Gauntlet, so that one gets destroyed. Destroying a card means that it lands in its owner's trash pile, basically over here, and the trash pile is basically a discard pile. But we're not done, because Final Dive also says that Fnatic deals one target X projectile damage, where X equals the destroyed target's current hit points before it was destroyed. So the Gauntlet had 3 hit points before it was destroyed, so now I can deal any target 3 projectile damage. And now we have a choice to make. I could actually deal Apostate 4 projectile damage because he's a nemesis, or I could deal Condemnation 2 projectile damage because it is reduced, its damage is reduced by 1. So what I'll actually do is deal 2 damage to the sword, dropping it from 11 to 9. Okay, so as I mentioned, this card gets discarded, and then it's Fnatic's time to play a power. And she has a power. Her innate power says that she deals 1 target 1 melee damage and 1 radiant damage. And for that I choose Apostate. And since it's 2 different instances of dealing damage, melee and radiant, both get increased by the Nemesis bonus. So actually I deal him 4 damage. So he drops from 66 hit points to 62. And finally, Fnatic draws a new card and adds it to her hand. Now it's Mr. Fixer's turn. He has 24 hit points left out of his 28, because he got hit by that sword melee attack. Mr. Fixer is a martial arts character, I would say, but he's also an auto mechanic, and that results in interesting combinations of the cards he can use and play. He also doesn't have any start of the turn effects, so he plays a card. He decides to play a tool, the dual crowbars. They are, well, a tool and an equipment. Equipment is also a kind of card that stays in play until you use it. And it says whenever Mr. Fixer deals damage, he may deal the same amount of damage to one other target as well. Also increase damage dealt by Mr. Fixer by 1. When this card enters play, return any other tools card in play to your hand. So basically he only can have 1 tools in play, and there are different tools with different effects. But this allows us to attack multiple targets and also increases damage by 1. So first of all, we use one of these tracking tokens to remember that he deals +1 damage. And then it's time to use a power. And we use his innate power that says Mr. Fixer deals 1 target 1 melee damage. So that's 2 melee damage. And thanks to the dual crowbars, we can also deal it to 2 targets. So we decide to deal Apostate 2 melee damage and Condemnation, the sword, 1 damage. And he also draws a card. And finally, it's Unity's turn. Unity is a character that can create bots and golems by her pure power of mind or her will of mind. And she has 26 hit points and hasn't received any damage yet. Decides to use an equipment, or play an equipment, a construction pylon. And it goes into play. And then next up is using a power. So her innate power, she could destroy 1 equipment card and put 1 mechanical golem from hand into play. But actually, the power on this equipment says that she can put up to 2 mechanical golems from hand into play and destroy this card. So we use the power, the card gets destroyed and discarded, but we can play 2 mechanical golems. One is a platform bot, and the other is a swift bot. Both of them receive hit point tokens according to their initial amount of hit points. And now let's take a closer look at the swift bot first. This card cannot be played during your play phase, so actually you have to find a way to construct these. You can just play them, and destroying this pylon was a way to play it. We can play an additional card during the play phase, but that's already over since we already used the power, but next turn. And we may draw an additional card during the draw phase. And the platform bot cannot be played from hand. This holds true for all the golems. Damage dealt to this card is reduced by 1. So we can actually show this as one of these tokens. And at the end of your turn, this card deals 1 target 3 energy damage. Okay, so basically we have the draw phase now. We draw 2 cards because of the swift bot. And then it's the end of our turn. We can deal 1 target 3 damage. and we decide to deal it to condemnation, so that's actually 2 damage. And then it's the environment's turn, and the environment, similar to the villain, has a start, a play phase where the top card is played, and an end phase. Now our environment is Rogue City, which is basically very similar to Gotham City from the Batman universe. It's a city where corruption is all over the place. You have dubious characters walking the streets, you have vigilantes, you have cops that aren't corrupt and try to fight the corruption of their colleagues. So it's not a nice place to be, actually. And we just play the top card because there's nothing in play that would trigger a start of the environment turn effect. And it's Twisting Back Alleys. Reduce damage dealt to villain targets by 1. At the end of the environment turn, players may play both the top card of the villain deck and the top card of the environment deck. If they do, destroy this card. Okay, so first of all villain targets get 1 less damage, and that is true for Apostat and his sword. So the sword is actually now taking 2 less damage each time. And since now it's the end of the environment turn, we could actually trigger this ability here, where we'd have to play both the top card from the villain deck and the top card from the environment deck to take this card out. But we won't do this at the moment because we have other ways to destroy this card. Okay, it's the villain turn again. We play the top card from the villain deck. Apocalypse. It's ongoing. At the start of the environment turn, destroy all cards in play other than this card, character cards, and relics. Then destroy this card. So basically we would use all equipment, spots, and everything if we don't get rid of this until the start of the environment turn. Then it's the end of the villain turn again. So his ability is triggered where he deals 2 melee damage and 2 infernal damage to the character with the highest hit points. So this time that's Unity with her 26 hit points left. So she takes 4 damage. And has 22 remaining. And then the effect on condemnation lets Apostate deal 3 melee damage to the one with the highest hit points, and now we have a tie between the Argent Adept and Mr. Fixer 24, and the Argent Adept decides to take the 3 points of damage because in the case of a tie we can decide what we do. The Argent Adept plays a card, the Saraband of Destruction. It's also ongoing, it's also a melody, and it also offers him a new perform text. Then using his power to activate a perform text, we activate the perform text of Ceremit of Destruction, and it says destroy 1 ongoing or environment card. So the original plan was to destroy the environment card, but the Apocalypse card is way more dangerous, and since it's ongoing, we can just destroy it using that perform text. And then he draws a card. Okay, we had a little bit of a luck here because Fnatic can now play Consecrated Ground. It's a one-shot ability, and it says destroy an ongoing card or an environment card, so we can actually also destroy the Twisting Back Alleys now. And then Fnatic deals up to 3 targets 1 radiant damage each. Now we only have 2 interesting targets in play, Apostat himself and Condemnation. And Condemnation will reduce this 1 radiant damage to nothing, but for Apostat it's actually increased by 1, so we can deal at least Apostat 2 radiant damage. And then this gets discarded. Then it's time to use a power, and we use her innate power of dealing 1 target 1 melee and 1 radiant damage. For Condemnation, both of them would be reduced to 0, but for Apostat they're increased by 1, so we can actually deal him 4 damage again. And then we draw a card. Mr. Fexer plays a one-shot card, Charge. He may immediately deal 1 target 2 melee damage. And this gets discarded. The 2 melee damage are actually 3, and because of the dual crowbars, we can deal them to 2 targets at the same time. So Apostat is dealt 3 damage, and Condemnation is dealt 2. And then we only have his innate power to use, and in combination with the increased damage and being able to deal the same damage to another target, we deal both of them 2 damage, and we draw a card. Unity plays a one-shot card called Hasty Augmentation. 1 hero may use a power now. If that power deals damage, increase the damage by 2. And this gets discarded. And of course, we choose Mr. Fixer. Now normally Mr. Fixer's power would deal 1 damage, 2, and because of the increase by Hasty Augmentation, that's 4, and we may deal it to 2 targets. That means that despite the damage reduction, Condemnation is now destroyed and gets discarded. And Apostat also gets 4 damage and is down to 45 hit points. Thanks to her Swift bot, Unity may actually play another card. There's also one shot called Brainstorm. Draw 2 cards. Unity deals up to 3 targets 1 lightning damage each. We only have 1 target, so he's dealt 1 lightning damage, and we may draw 2 cards. Then for her power, the only power we have in play is her innate power, where we have to destroy 1 equipment card, so we can play 1 mechanical golem. And the only equipment card in play that we could actually destroy is Mr. Fixer's dual crowbars, and he's actually fine with it, so this one gets discarded. And we can play the B-bot. The B-bot only has 1 hit point, but when it is destroyed, Unity deals 1 target 2 projectile damage, and may also destroy 1 ongoing or environment card. Then Unity may draw 2 cards because of the Swift bot. And at the end of the turn, her platform bot deals Apostate 3 energy damage. From the environment deck we play Scum and Villainy. At the end of the environment turn, play the top card of the villain deck. Okay, so that will happen nonetheless because the end of the environment turn will be basically right now. At the start of the environment turn, the villain character card deals each hero target 3 melee damage and destroys this card. So if we destroy it before the start of the environment turn, we actually can prevent this from ever happening. Okay, but right now we have to play the top card from the villain deck. Fallen Angel, 1 shot. Apostate deals each hero target 3 infernal damage. Each villain relic regains 5 hit points. So we're lucky because we don't have any villain relics in play, but each hero target is dealt 3 infernal damage. That means that the Argent Adept drops from 21 to 18. For Fanatic, that's actually 4 damage because of the Nemesis thing, and so she's at 19. Mr. Fixer is at 21. And now things get a little interesting because Apostate deals the damage to each hero target, and that includes all of Unity's bots. First of all, Unity has 22, so she drops to 19. Her platform bot takes 1 less damage, so he actually survives with just 1. The Swift bot gets reduced from 6 to 3, and the B-bot gets destroyed, but ironically, that's his whole sole purpose, getting destroyed. So just as a reminder, Unity may now deal 1 target 2 projectile damage, of course that's Apostate, and then we may even destroy 1 ongoing or environment card, so goodbye Scum and Villainy. So all that was still the aftermath of the environment card allowing to play the villain card, the villain 1 card, which resulted in all the damage, and destroying the environment card, so now it's Apostate's regular villain turn, and we play a card. And this is a demon with 6 hit points. It's a Fiendish Pugilist, whatever that means, Latin probably. And at the end of the villain turn, this card deals the hero target with the highest hit points 3 melee damage. Reduce damage dealt to Apostate by 1. Okay, so Apostate takes 1 less damage because of his demon minion thing. Then first we have his usual 4 damage, 2 melee and 2 infernal to the character with the highest hit points. In this case this is Mr. Fixer, so he goes from 21 to 17. And then the demon would deal 3 melee damage to the one with the highest hit points, and Unity and Fanatic both have 19. So Unity offers to step up and take it. The Argent Adept plays a 1-shot card called Instrumental Conjuration. Search your deck or trash for an instrument card and put it into play. If you search your deck, shuffle your deck, you may draw a card. Okay, let's do that now. So this one is discarded. Obviously there are no instruments in our trash, so we'll just look in our deck for an instrument. Okay, we found these Drake's Pipes, we put them into play. Then per the effect of Instrumental Conjuration we may draw yet another card. And then it's time to activate a power. We have our usual innate power, but we also have the new power on this instrument. And it says activate the perform text of up to 2 different melody cards. And by sheer coincidence, both of these are melody cards, so we can actually now use both powers. Just as a reminder, the Scherzo of Frost and Flame lets us deal 1 cold damage and then 1 fire damage. And for both targets we choose this ugly demon over there. So it goes from 6 to 4 hit points. And then the Cereband of Destruction would allow us to destroy 1 ongoing or environment card, but we don't have one at this point. But now, thanks to Instrument, we can actually use 2 powers or perform abilities in 1 turn. And finally, we draw 1 card. Fanatic plays Absolution, and that is her sword. It's an equipment, it's a relic, it's limited, so you can only have 1 copy of this in play. When this card enters play, Fanatic regains 1 hit point. so actually she goes back from 19 to 20. And then as a power, she actually decides to use Absolution's power. She may select one damage type as this card's damage type, which doesn't matter at this point, because until now we haven't seen any villains or targets that have been immune to one damage type or the other. So actually it doesn't matter, let's just say it's melee, and then we can deal one target 3 melee damage. And we choose Apostate, so the +1 from the Nemesis actually cancels out with a -1 he has from his protecting minion, so he gets 3 melee damage. And of course we draw a card. Mr. Fixer plays a new tool, this time a pipe wrench. It has the usual restriction that only one tool can be in play, but it increases the damage dealt by him and it reduces the damage dealt to him. And then we use our usual power of dealing one target 1 melee damage, so actually 2, and we decide to put that on Apostate, so he gets 1 damage. And we draw a card. Unity plays a hasty augmentation again, chooses Mr. Fixer, so he's basically able to deal one target 4 damage due to this increase by 2, and that's just enough to take out the demon, which means that Apostate's damage reduction is also gone now. Then, thanks to the Swift bot, we can play another card, and that is Volatile Parts. Volatile Parts is an equipment, and it says whenever a mechanical golem is destroyed, Unity deals the non-hero target with the lowest hit points 2 fire damage. And then as our power, we decide to destroy this equipment actually because it doesn't sound that useful at the point, to bring in another mechanical golem, and this time a raptor bot. And then we can draw 2 cards, still thanks to the Swift bot over here. And then at the end of the turn, the platform bot deals 3 energy damage, and the mechanical golem deals X melee damage, where X is the number of mechanical golems in play +1. We have 3 golems, so +1 that's 4. So 4 melee damage and 3 energy damage totals 7 damage for Apostate. Then the environment plays Dr. Tremata, which is actually something that is good for us. She's a forensic scientist. This card is immune to damage from heroes. At the end of the environment turn, reveal the top 2 cards of the environment deck, put one on top of the environment deck and one on the bottom. Then the villain character card either deals this card or the hero with the lowest hit points 4 melee damage. So let's put her in play first and give her 6 hit points. And since it's the end of the environment turn now, we can actually take a look at both of these cards. And they're both not very nice, but I think the Ambitious Racketeer is not that bad. So he goes on top, and the Toxic Sludge goes at the bottom. And we actually decide to let her catch the 4 melee damage. So she's down to 2. Then it's the villain's turn. He plays an Apocalypse card again. So basically we still have at the start of the environment turn to do something about it, but we have lots of means to do so, so that's not really bad. And then we have our usual 4 damage being dealt. And right now Unity is the one with the most hit points, so she actually gets 6 because both instances of the damage are increased. So she goes from 20 to 14. The Argent Adept decides to play Polyphoric Flare. That's a one-shot. He can deal himself 2 energy damage, and if he takes damage this way, you may use a power now. So this one gets discarded. We are dealt 2 damage. And we use a power. Of course, we use the instrument's power. That lets us, again, do 2 different things. One is destroy an ongoing card, and we destroy the Apocalypse. And the other is to deal 1 cold and 1 fire damage, so Apostate drops to 26. And then for the power, we do the exact same thing again. There's nothing to destroy right now, because the Forensic Scientist is still actually useful, so we just do him another 2 damage and draw a card. Fanatic prepares for a massive strike against the villain by playing Smite the Transgressor, which is a one-shot. First, she deals 1 target 2 melee damage, that's actually 3 for him, and it also says that she may use an additional power this turn. But first, 3 melee damage to Apostate. Then, as the first power, she uses her sword. The damage type doesn't matter, but basically she deals him 4 damage, and that was with her innate ability, that's another 4 damage. And then she draws a card. Mr. Fixer plays a style card, and that is one of the other types of cards he can have, the Greasy Monkey Fist. He can also have only 1 style in play, so 1 tool and 1 style, And whenever he deals damage, we can choose the type of damage. That is irrelevant in this case, as I already said, but his damage is again increased by 1. And then for his power, he can actually deal one target 3 melee damage. And that means that our villain is now down to 10 hit points, and we can draw a card. Unity plays a Brainstorm, so she can draw 2 cards and deal up to 3 targets 1 lightning damage each. We only have 1 target, so he gets a damage, and we draw 2 cards. Then she can play another card thanks to the Swift bot, which is a modular workbench. It's an equipment, so it goes into play. And then for using a power, she uses this power, which says discard 1 card. If you do, put 1 mechanical golem from hand into play. So 1 card gets discarded, and we can play a Cryobot. The Cryobot has 7 hit points. It's immune to cold damage, and whenever it is dealt damage, it deals each non-hero target 1 cold damage. So, but the most important thing is that we now have yet another golem. Then she draws 2 cards. And then the platform bot deals 3 damage, and the raptor bot deals 5 damage because we have 4 golems plus 1, that's a total of 8. So the villain actually survives with 1 hit point for now. From the environment deck, we play the Ambitious Racketeer. He has 13 hit points. At the end of the environment turn, this card deals 3 hero targets 2 projectile damage each. And at the start of the environment turn, he regains 2 hit points. Now, we have several at the end of the environment turn effects to deal with. The first is her, so we take a look at 2 cards. They're actually the same, so it doesn't really matter which one you put on top and which one at the bottom. Then we'll have the villain actually kill her, because we don't want to take damage for herself. I know, not very heroic actually. And then we have the Racketeer, who deals 2 projectile damage to 3 different targets. And as these hero targets, we choose Mr. Fixer, who gets only 1 damage. Unity's Swift bot. And finally, Unity's Cryobot. But the thing is, whenever it's dealt damage, it deals each non-hero target 1 cold damage. That means that the Racketeer actually loses 1 hit point, and way more importantly, Apostat loses his 1 remaining hit point. Now, if you take a closer look, it says, if Apostat would be reduced to 0 of your hit points and there's a villain relic in play, destroy the villain relic with the lowest hit points and flip Apostat's villain's character card. So if you would still have a villain relic, that would actually save his life, because on his other side, he would be restored to 20 hit points. If we kill him on this side and there's no relic in play, at some point we would actually get him, but if there's a relic in play, he's always flipped, restored to 20 hit points, and so on. But this time we were lucky, there's no relic left in play, and so he's actually dead, and we have won. There's 2 things I want to mention. First, there is an advanced mode for each and every villain, which, well, makes the game harder, and for example in this case would have been that he doesn't only start with Condemnation, but also with the Tome of the Unknowable. It's also a relic with 3 hit points, but whenever a player draws a hero card, and that happens a lot of times, the top card of the villain deck would be played. Okay, it only has 3 hit points, but it could have been some trouble, especially if you have heroes who can't deal damage right from the start of the game. Also, when this card would be destroyed, you would search the villain trash for Condemnation and put it into play again. And the second thing I want to talk about is what happens when a hero is actually dropped to 0 hit points. So, heroes don't die, they're only incapacitated, and when it happens you remove all your cards from play and you just flip your character card, and then you have 3 abilities. And each time your turn comes round, you just choose one of these abilities. So for example, for the Argent and Adept, it would be either 1 hero regains 1 hit point, or 1 hero may use a power now. Or you can select the damage type, and until the start of your next turn, increase all damage of that type dealt by hero targets by 1. So these are actually quite nice. You still have something to do, and these abilities are not bad. So for example, in our 4-player game, if only 2 heroes would be remaining and 2 would be incapacitated, because of those abilities, the other 2 heroes would actually be able to fight better. And these abilities that you can do when you're incapacitated are again different for each hero, again tied a little bit with the theme for the hero. So for example, if you take a look at Mr. Fixer, here would be that select an equipment card in your hero trash, put it into play, select a player, the player may draw a card now or destroy an ongoing card. So, I hope you enjoyed the overview of this game of Sentinels of the Multiverse. I hope by showing you this I could give you an idea of how the game is played, rules-wise, but actually also how it plays. And by saying how it plays, I mean, well, certain aspects of the game. The first is actually how easy it is, how easy it flows. Basically, on your turn, you just do a couple of things. It's pretty straightforward. Yes, there's some tracking of increased damage and damage reductions and these kind of things, but with the markers provided with the Enhanced Edition, I think that's actually really easy. The next thing is how different the heroes play. I mean, you've seen 4 heroes, and I would say that in the video, the differences could be obvious. So, for example, Fnatic just dealing plain out damage, Mr. Fix also dealing damage but having his tools and style cards, Unity going very indirectly of having these bots that do effects for her, and the Argent Adept, actually with the highest complexity of the heroes, having these different abilities, and then the instruments then can trigger these different abilities. And the final point is maybe that you've seen that this was a rather easy game. We had 4 heroes, we had a villain of difficulty level of only 2. And we didn't even play with the advanced mode, so that's a bit of an advice if you play this game. If you want a challenge, be sure to, well, pick your characters and villains and the environment accordingly. Yeah, I guess that's it for now. To make a little bit of advertisement, Greater Than Games currently has the 3rd expansion for this game on Kickstarter right now, and you can actually get everything, including this Enhanced Edition and the other 2 expansions. So if you like what you've seen in this video, maybe want to consider actually pledging for it. Okay, then I see you next time. Have fun playing, and bye bye.